like to start this conversation by asking a question to hopefully help everyone in the audience better understand your journey, especially as a teacher. So what do you recall from the time that you were a teacher yourself? And also, what made you transition into the world of technology?
So it's actually not a linear story, because the first time I've been teaching was when I was still studying, and I was doing a part-time job, and I liked it quite a lot. So I ended up teaching at least two days per week during my studies, and then I moved to a more business traditional career, as you said, in several companies. But I always had teaching and learning in the back of my head. I then had two kids who became teenagers, who were spending time studying, and sometimes also struggling with certain topics, struggling with motivation at times, and so on. And that's really what put me back to the path of education, and especially education technology. So my goal was to use the progress that has been made in the last 5 to 10 years in order to not necessarily to completely change the way we learn or teach, but to make it something more enjoyable and more effective. Because to be quite honest, I was at times frustrated, both as a teacher and as a parent, to see that maybe education is one of the sectors that has not benefited as much as others from the progress in technology. So that was really my motivation.
That's really interesting. And how did Smartest start, and what problems does it solve for teachers and students?
So the way we started was slightly different to the tool as it stands today, because we had initially imagined it as being a self-learning tool where students would actually use their smartphone to take a picture of a document and rehearse based on the documents they need for school. And that was the main idea, because I was always a firm believer in practicing. I think so. Lee was saying before that information only really becomes knowledge when it personally matters to you. But I also believe that it only truly becomes knowledge when you've used this information and you have done something with it. I think most of you are probably familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy, and I'm always thinking that in order to do interesting things, you need first to acquire the basic knowledge and then move up this pyramid. But I noticed that a lot of times just acquiring these basics was something that a lot of children were struggling with. Yeah, and personally, I was trying to help my children. They were 13 and 15 at that time. Better practice, but I could never find exactly what they were looking for or what they were studying on the internet. I was searching, and I could find a lot of different exercises, but they were not of good quality enough, or sometimes they were covering topics in a different way. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could start with the documents that or with the books or with the papers that the students need to study anyway, and practice from these existing documents. And that's how Smartest was born, really. I think there is a question, Genta, from Veronica. How do you want to do it? Should we pause to answer the questions as they come, or?
Yes, sure, absolutely.
Yes. So I'll quickly take this question from Veronica about sharing exercises, and that's a very valid comment. And this is something that several teachers have told us. Initially, we designed the current version of Smartest to be used in a school environment where we would create the classes for the school. Every student would be registered, and therefore not so much as a self-service tool for teachers. But what we noticed is that sometimes teachers also need to invite quickly students to participate in an exercise without necessarily going through the class creation and the logins and so on. So right now, to answer your question, Veronica, what you can do is share exercises with people who are in the classroom, but we've implemented a new way to invite students via a PIN code. And this new way of inviting students is going to be available either tomorrow or latest by the end of the week for you to try. So for the ones who have been using SmartTest, I would be very curious about your feedback. It's going to be a new feature, but we are going to launch it this week.
That's a great news. That's a great announcement. Yeah. Okay. So another question I have is, and I'm assuming students are more passionate about technology, and they don't need a lot of time to understand any tool that they're presented with. But sadly, often, that's not the case with teachers. How do you train teachers to use the system, and how long does it take for a teacher to become proficient using SmartTest?
Yes. So more time than we would want right now, to be completely transparent, because we are also learning from the feedback we receive from teachers, and we want to make it clearly more intuitive. Right now, my estimate is that after 1 hour of using SmartTest, you get good enough grip of some of the exercise types. But what I hear also sometimes from teachers is that some of the functionalities of the tools are a bit difficult to find, and that teachers can feel left to their own devices sometimes, because you can do so much with the tool, but then you are not guided through a step-by-step process. So this is something we are working on for the next version of SmartTest that we'll plan to release in Q1 next year. So right now, my answer would be, probably my estimate would be 1 hour to really use the tool and create your first exercises. And I would say probably several hours to really exploit all the possibilities.
That's interesting. And in the audience, I know there are lots of teachers who have already tried and worked with SmartTest. So perhaps we can ask a very quick question to everyone. How much time did you need to basically understand SmartTest? We also know Lee created a great video to share that we shared with you, but perhaps you can add your answers in the chat window. As the co-founder of SmartTest, have you ever encountered any conservative attitudes from other educators? Those who, despite the digital age we live in, still believe that the excessive use of technology is replacing the traditional way of teaching and learning, and is somehow negatively influencing some of the most fundamental skills of students, like writing or reading, even math basic skills. Have you ever found yourself in such a situation? And how did you respond to their attitude?
Yes, so first of all, I'm still teaching 1 day a week, so that means that I actually meet a lot of different teachers who are on different sides of the spectrum. So a lot of them are super open to using technology and are eager. Some others would like to use it more, but are sometimes a bit afraid of not mastering or not having the skills they need to do so. And it's true, sometimes I speak to colleagues or the teachers who are on the other side of the spectrum, meaning that for them, actually using the technology in the classroom or outside of the classroom is not really helping. It could even hinder sometimes the work of the students. And the arguments I hear for this is that nothing can replace pen and paper, that technology is so that kids are already spending way too much time on smartphones and in front of screens anyway. That memorization is not as good when you're using a screen, for instance, than when you're doing things more traditionally. And so my first answer is that I acknowledge this, and people have their personal preferences, even teachers, and that's perfectly normal. sometimes I feel though that some teachers make assumptions on behalf of their students, and which might not always necessarily be true. And I would encourage them to speak to their students. Honestly, what I hear often is that I was talking last week to someone who has been teaching for 35 years and said, quite honestly, we were both actually attending a course about using smartphones in the classroom. And he said, quite honestly, the only reason I'm here is because my management puts pressure on me because they say I need to use digital learning tools. Yeah, but if it were up to me, I would not use them. But after talking a bit more with him, what he said is that he's also conscious that his students are anyway embracing this technology, and that if he doesn't go in their direction, they are almost going to speak two different languages. And that already today there is a divide between students and their teachers for different reasons. But if teachers don't make the effort of going in the direction of the language used by their students, then they are missing a big opportunity. That's what I usually say.
That's interesting. So you're basically saying that teachers should, keep an equilibrium, you know, by intersecting both technology and the traditional way of teaching. So not going with one way.
I think so. I think so, and it's about also making a step in the direction of your students. Having said this, as much as I'm passionate about technology in education, I would never advocate for giving up paper completely. I think it has also its merits, of course. But hybrid learning is a fantastic opportunity, and often I think it's just that people are a bit afraid of not being on top of the technology. Also, as a teacher, you're in a position where you need to demonstrate competence. You need to project a kind of authority as well sometimes. And if you're caught being struggling with a tool, that can put you in an uncomfortable situation. So I understand this as well, and I think a lot of schools are now helping their teachers bridge this divide for this very reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before we take a few minutes to take the survey, I'd like to ask one more question. I often encounter this question amongst our community of teachers, as you know, in a classroom, you always get remarkable students, and you also have students who are, a bit slow, I would say, to absorb new information. We always talk about tools being used to help students overcome certain difficulties. But do educational tools, and smartest in particular, slow down the top students? How do you ensure that this doesn't actually happen?
Yeah, that's really at the core of the experience we want to build, because the reason why we wanted Smartest to use technology from artificial intelligence, from natural language processing, and so on, was to enable teachers to create actually more practice exercises than they can today with pen and paper or with other tools, for this very reason. Because we realize that some students will want to go the extra mile and, for instance, complete more exercises than the rest of the class, or complete the exercise in different modes. So some of you who might have noticed that on Smartest, you can do an exercise in a simple form like a multiple choice question or drag and drop, but you can also have sometimes to type the answer, which is much more difficult. And that we try to build these kind of levels within the exercises that can be created with Smartest for this very reason, Genta.
Nice. Interesting. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I think now we could it's a good time, I think, to share a few questions. So that form that you have already prepared, Mehdi, and why not? We can also discuss a few questions through with you as you go. So, will you be able to share the form in the chat, Mehdi?
Yes, I think
Okay.
I just did. And hopefully that works for everyone. So I try to minimize the number of questions and just ask. The first questions are more about your current practice, and then the next questions are more about smart. I hear less people typing on their keyboard, so probably we.
Yeah. So is everyone able to access the form when you click on the link that Mehdi has just shared in the chat section?
Yes, I did and submitted.
Yeah, we have 8 responses now.
Okay. Thank you, Veronica, Combs, Zorisbel, Atin.
And Mehdi, we will send out the survey, of course, as well to all the participants who couldn't participate to participate tonight. Hopefully we get a bigger engagement rate for you.
Perfect. Thanks.
Genta, sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, okay. Yeah, so we'll definitely share that form with the bigger group of registrants later on this week. So going back to our previous conversation, Mehdi, what has been your biggest challenge with Smartest, and what are you most proud of?
I think as a startup founder, the biggest challenge you're always going to have is finding what's called the product market fit. So in general, you start with an idea, and you think you've identified a problem, and the question then is, so first of all, do enough people have this problem you are trying to solve? And the second thing is, are you actually bringing an actual solution to this problem? And as a startup, you always have to run a lot of iterations until you find the answer to this question. And I think our biggest challenge was to understand which problem we were solving for whom, and then to build a solution that was doing a good job. And it's never easy, especially when you innovate, because you're always dependent on technology, but you're also dependent on the environment your users work with. And education, quite honestly, is a very challenging environment, because you have a lot of different ways to teach. You have a lot of different things to teach. You have various, so depending on the countries as well, the curriculum is different. You have different expectations, and finding a way to bring a solution that would satisfy the most needs was the biggest challenge for us. Yeah, and the thing I'm most proud of is when a teacher or a student tells us that they actually made progress, that they managed to do something they didn't think they were capable of doing, thanks to Smartest. That's really what keeps us going. Yeah, because as any, I think Gijs would say this because he has startup experience as well, but being in a startup is like being on a roller coaster. Some days you think you're going to conquer the world. Some days you think that why the hell did I start the whole thing? Yeah, and this motivation is what keeps us going on. So when we have recently, I had actually a parent writing to us and saying, "Hey, my kid is using Smartest with his class, and he was never interested in learning German because he thought it was super annoying, but he's now doing these exercises all the time, and he managed to progress." And these are really the things that we are the most proud of. Yeah.
Gijs, do you agree with Mehdi that being in the business world sometimes is a roller coaster? There are its ups and downs.
But Genta, Mehdi, I shared it already in the chat box. I tried already for a year now to get kind of like the business life interact with the life of a teacher. And for example, the story about a user persona, that's the question that Mehdi is asking himself as well with Smartest. Who is my user persona? What do teachers need? What is the problem that we can solve for them? But the same for the teachers with the students. So, I mean, what are the problems the students are having, and how can we solve them as a teacher? But also the other way around, because I truly believe in the equal level of human beings. So, yeah, I really love it. And Genta, I would like to do one thing. I don't know, someone is not muted and doing a lot of things in the background. But before we move to the end, Genta and Mehdi, because Genta, I would love you to finish this session. But before we do that, I got like an extra poll. I created that 1 minute ago, because this is kind of the first time that Genta is interviewing someone in a fireside chat. And I was doing like a soul chat with Lee, and we were amazed by you. And Mylinda, you gave like big compliments to Genta. So we give you 1 minute to answer this question. And Genta, this is really for you. There we go. Start the poll, and we as facilitators, we can answer as well. Mehdi, hopefully you can answer as well. So you can see, how did Genta perform as our brand Oprah Winfrey? So guys, 1 minute to share your thoughts and emotions, and then we will move towards the end.
I'm blushing now.
You can see already. Thanks, Atin. It's like excellent. Mylinda says a big 10. Rosanna says you performed great. I felt I was interviewed by Oprah, actually, thanks to that one, Mehdi. Here, Lee, I think Genta would beat Oprah for president. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and the interview was very informative and helpful, really interesting questions. It was brilliant, Milka. Thanks. Very well, and certainly with a lot more charm. Okay, cool. Wow. Now, let's end this poll. I can hear nobody's typing anymore. So, Genta, the floor is yours, of course, to wrap it up, the full session, and also that maybe I'm going to give one more deadline to all of you on the logistic part. The course will be open till the end of the year. So that means you need to finish all the assignments before 2022. And for the rest, Genta, the floor is yours to wrap it up and to say goodbye to everyone.
I mean, I had a few more questions I wanted to ask, but I'm not going to skip this one because I feel this is very, very important. What are the Smartest future plans? What is the next big step for Smartest?
So the next big step will be to release this version I was mentioning before, which is going to be much more intuitive and guide teachers through each step they need to create brilliant exercises. So that's going to be the first one, because we want people to use Smartest at 100% and make their teaching lives easier. The second thing is we want also to build new features that are going to make the doing the exercises more exciting from the students' side as well. So we want to use some techniques from gamification to also make students do the exercises with more enthusiasm. Today, we believe that the exercises can really be helpful for the learning, but we also are aware that the students who typically would not want to do exercises, we need to nudge them a little bit more, and that's going to be a big task for us. So these would be the two things.
Nice. So this seems like changes that you will be making together with Smartest within a short period of time. And perhaps very last one, in 5 years from now, what is Smartest going to look like?
Yeah. So our goal is to build an assistant that knows your learning profile, that knows your teaching profile as well, and that can help you by knowing what your preferences are, by knowing what your students' learning preferences are as well, to be like a coach to them that gives them tips, that gives them reminders, that also maybe challenges them a little bit more. You were asking, for instance, what do we do for students who want to go the extra mile, but what can we do also for students who are still struggling? So our goal is not to stop at facilitating the creation of exercises, but actually using the data that teachers will gather from their students to assist and to become a real learning and teaching coach in 5 years. So that's what we want to do.
This is really great, Mehdi. When I first heard about Smartest and all the things that you could do with it, I honestly was amazed. I mean, it's such an innovative platform and a fantastic solution, I would say, for teachers that I can only hope educators across the world can learn about Smartest as soon as possible, and I hope that they will not waste their time, but instead just dive into it and explore the many possibilities that this platform offers for them and their students. Mehdi, again, thanks a lot for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us today. I absolutely enjoyed this fireside chat, and this entire session is definitely going to stick into my memory. And you made it possible, Mehdi. The amazing audience made it possible, and I'm really grateful.